What is up everyone, it's Saber here and welcome to another Naruto What If you end up liking the video, please consider subscribing. It's free and you can take it back at any time and it really helps me out, and this is my main channel, so if you're interested in what if Naruto had the DNA of every member of the Akatsuki, or what if Naruto was neglected and joined the Straw Hat Pirates, go check out my main channel. And with all of the YouTube formalities out of the way, let's get into it. As Kushina sat in her medical bed, she bore witness in sheer disbelief of Hisashi's only son had nearly committed familicide of Hitomi's oldest daughter. Her mind couldn't comprehend the sight of seeing family wanting to slay another member of their family to an Uzumaki that went against her clan's core founding principles. Yugao only gazed at the screen with both sadness and disappointment. He lashes out with his anger blindly, even against someone who did him no wrong. If allowed to let that hate fester, he will endanger himself and his team. Her sensei did not reply as her violet eyes held nothing but sadness. Why did everything have go so wrong? However, she knew as much as she wanted to do something she wouldn't allow it. It was a Hyuga clan matter and had to be dealt by the clan itself, but clearly not a single damn thing has been done up to this point, which allowed this messed up bullshit to happen. With a clenched fist, Kushina simply growled, "Things will be made right, I promise you." Hitomi Hisashi Anko grunted as she frowned. Well, that was fucked up. Ibiki only gave a slight nod as he grimly observed the crew taking the Hyuga heiress away for medical. His eyes soon gazed up to one responsible beside those two. Jiraiya scowled deeply with his arms crossed. "I knew things with the Hyuga were edgy at best, but looks like it's only has been getting worse between the main and branch houses." The old Sarutobi could feel his former student's eyes on him. "What do you want me to do, Jiraiya?" The Hokage said with exasperation. "I can't directly interfere with clan traditions, which is exactly the root of the problem with the Hyuga." "I know, sensei, I just hope they wake up before they destroy each other." Jiraiya says grimly, "There is enough hate in the world as it is. This generation should never have to pay for our mistakes." Hiruzen felt responsible for the situation. He had been weak those years ago when Kumo had tried to kidnap Hayashi's oldest and the man had caught him on the act and killed him. Kumo had the gall to act outraged and demanded a pair of Byakugan eyes as reparation on the threat of war, and Hiruzen had conceded he was so tired of war he just agreed with their baseless demands. And now, upon seeing the son of the man who had sacrificed himself instead of his twin, seeing Neji ruthlessly injure and ready to kill his own younger cousin for his own failures, it was all the more reason he knew he needed to retire. He sighed, feeling the burden of his mistakes weighing down on him. His student couldn't help but see him age decades more right before his eyes with how tired he sounded. "I'm old, Jiraiya," Hiruzen said. "The village needs someone younger, someone who isn't burdened by so many years of struggle, a Hokage who can do what must be done without fear." The Gama-Sannin grunted. "We both know I can't do it for obvious reasons. The brat is not even remotely ready yet. Red does not have the temperament, and Kakashi is still trying to pick up the pieces of himself, which is why we may have to do something drastic when the exam is over." Hiruzen gave his student a knowing look for which Jiraiya's jaw almost dropped. "You don't mean?" Jiraiya spoke, stuttering. "Sensei, she'll never come back." The elderly Hokage gave his student a long dry gaze. "I think we both know Red will have her own opinion in that matter, whether she likes it or not." His former student simply paled. Naruto couldn't stop himself from scowling as he lingered a piercing glare over to Neji, who simply gazed back at him with unflinching cold apathy, as if his eyes spoke, "I'd gladly do it all over again and finish the job." The blonde felt his temper building again till he received a light bonk to his head. He looked up, seeing Kakashi stern. "Enough, Naruto, this won't help Hinata or yourself. If you pick a fight with Neji now, you will only get disqualified from the exams." By the blonde's glare in response, he cared very little about the exam. Internally, Kakashi sighed. He can't really help it being an Uzumaki, but I won't let his temper get the best of him. He can be angry at me all day for all I care. However, before Kakashi could speak again, Sakura grabbed Naruto by the shoulders and made him look at her. The blonde blinked at the strong jade eyes glaring at him. No word was spoken as both stared at each other before Naruto sighed as he lowered his head. Sasuke lifted a brow. "We can be thankful Sakura can keep Naruto calm at least." The rosette let go as Naruto gave her a nod and rested his arms on the railing. "Sorry about that. I mean, I knew things were bad with Hyuga's, least what I overheard from Gigi, but that was granted. He did not know Hinata that well, or at all really. She was always so damn shy and quiet, but he could say she did not treat him like their class did during the academy days, even if they weren't friends." His blood boiled, seeing her own kin blatantly tried to kill her. "Whatever you overheard from the Hokage will never be the whole story," Kakashi said quietly. "Their elders and traditions have been their foundations for too long, but at the same time it is those things that are causing such a rift between the main family and the branch family." Sasuke crosses his arms on the railing. "Even I heard some things about it, but since the Hyuga keeps matters like that private, we don't really have a clue just how bad it really is." His eyes narrowed. "But I won't condone what Neji did to Hinata. Was justified if you want to take your rage out on someone it should be who you're really mad at it. Was just pointless to get mad at someone who wasn't even responsible, and he's mad at the entire main branch. Sakura adds, I don't think there is someone in particular. In any case, watch your backs if you face him like you. Sasuke, he was last year's Rookie of the Year and is considered a genius among his clan. None of you must take him lightly, Kakashi says sternly. All three nodded as the board lighted up again. Everyone watched as two names appeared with varied reactions. Shikamaru Nara vs Sabaku no Temari. Upon seeing his name, the Nara let out a long throaty noise. Oh great, my match comes right after all that gloom and doom. Chuji, who had finally woken up, simply shook his head while eating some chips. Asuma just sighed, while Ino, being the sole motivator of the team, smacked Shika in the head. Oh hush up and get down there, you lazy ass. Troublesome. On the opposite side, Temari smirked. Well, about damn time. She leapt over the railing onto the arena floor while, to her utter annoyance, her opponent slowly came down the stairs. I doubt any of us want to be in this damn tower all day. Let me just kick your ass so we can go about our own business. Do all you blondes seriously have hair trigger temper? Shikamaru dryly muttered as every blonde in the arena felt their collective eyes twitch as they glared. Plus I get to fight a woman, the joy never ends. Shikamaru spoke dryly, not noticing or caring that now all the current women in the arena directed their anger right towards him. Kushina felt her eye twitch. He is definitely Shikaku, a brat right down to the damn dry smartass attitude. To this day she never understood just what Yoshino saw in that man to marry that lazy bum, but then again her own choice in men was just as odd. Temari slowly smirked. You're going down? Yeah, Shikamaru said disinterestedly, which made Temari grunt with anger at her opponent's downright lazy attitude. Hey, ate coughed some before he spoke. Shikamaru Nara vs Temari no Sabaku begin. I surrender, Shikamaru uttered. The mere second the proctor called for the match to start, everyone in the arena save Gaara and the Oto Jounin face faulted in medical ward. The ANBU guards heard a loud thump. They quickly came into the room only to sweat drop seeing both their former captain and current lying face first on the floor. It took a few seconds before Naruto was back up along with an irate Ino. What the hell? Shika, the two loudest blondes of Konoha, bellowed. Tch, it's too troublesome to fight right now. That's your excuse for everything? Temari on her part growled, are you that scared, or are you just mocking me? Shikamaru just looks at her tiredly. Man, you're so loud, he groaned as he rubbed his neck, which only infuriated the Sunanin further as everyone else soon regained their composure and got back to their feet. Hey, 8 side winner Sabaku no Temari. The Sunakunoichi only seethed as her lazy opponent walked back up to his team. Asuma groaned as he defectively rubbed his hands over his face. He understood Shikamaru's reasoning. Her opponent had the edge on range given her weapon of choice, and the Nara lacked the necessary speed to dodge. Constantly being always on the move wouldn't allow him to employ his shadow techniques properly. Not to mention the arena wasn't the most suitable for Shikamaru to come up with a plan to defeat his opponent fast enough. Taking all that into account, his students' odds of success were very poor, and Shikamaru had known this, so he surrendered. Doesn't mean Asuma was happy about it. Kakashi chuckled. Well, that's 3 for 3. Asuma shut up. Hatake Naruto and his team just glared at Shikamaru as he came up the stairs. Your mom's gonna get you for this, you know that right? Naruto deadpan. Shikamaru slumps. I know, but at least I can tell her I passed the second stage. Tch, though that would be even more troublesome too, he retorted, which prompted Naruto to bang his head on the railing. Sasuke face palmed while Sakura's eye twitched. The Kumo and Kiri teams just looked at him. How can he be that lazy? You don't know many Nara, do you? Kakashi dryly spoke up finally after everyone settled down and Temari growled her way back to her team. New names came from the monitor. Sabaku no Kankuro vs Onwa, rolling his lollipop in his mouth. The Kumonin sighed. Oh joy, well wish me luck, he mumbled to his teammates. Not that it'll help at all because I'm gonna lose anyway. Samui rubbed her eyes while Yujito groaned. Karui on her part slapped the back of Onwa's head. Oh shape up, go down there and whip that crossdresser's ass. It's a traditional Suna puppeteer outfit. Came a righteous bellow from the other side of the arena. Naruto shouted back in the clown makeup, that's war paint, asshole. A pronounced tick mark forms on Kankuro's head, shaking his fist. Temari thought to mention his brother tended to borrow her makeup when he ran out of his war paint, but decided he had been teased enough. The Suna Genin grumbled all the way down the stairs while his opponent leapt over the balcony. Kushina was versed in Suna's traditions and was well aware of their gear. Like the outfit young Kankuro was wearing, puppet Nin of Suna were both widely feared and respected throughout the nation. She even recalled a certain old hag that was one of the true masters of the craft, but it did not stop her from laughing her head Off, I can't believe they still have those. He looks like a cat. Yugao just simply rubbed her eyes at her sensei's antics. Omoi vs Sabaku no Kankuro begin. Heiei leapt from the arena. Kankuro quickly took out the large strapped object behind his back with a predatory smirk. Omoi tensed and drew his sword. The Kumonin held his weapon at the ready. He was no fool, and soon a puppet masters are adept at long range. If he was going to have any way of winning, he'd have to be smart. The straps on the puppet suddenly were set loose. They unfurl and fall, revealing a rather creepy-looking marionette. In Omoi's opinion, it was covered in a dirty brown cloak, had several limbs, wild fake hair, 3 soulless eyes, and sharp metallic teeth coming from the hanging jaw. Sakura lightly shivered. That is a creepy doll. Suna have a long tradition of using puppetry techniques, Kakashi explained as he read his book. It looks like this kid follows said tradition. Puppets. Sasuke snorted. Seriously, you underestimate how powerful they can be in the right hand. Sasuke back down to the arena. Kankuro smirked. Think you can take on Karasu? Omoi shrugs. Not really. Think it's more likely I'll lose this fight without you breaking as much as a sweat. The team from Kumo collectively facepalm loudly. Kankuro just stared. While I like my opponents to realize how pointless it is to fight against me, I can't help but ask, is there any antidepressive medication you should be taking? Karui yelled out. Idiot says there are spy seals in them. Of course there are spy seals in them. You can't see them because they're very tiny and are on the pills. Yujito holds up a small bottle and read the tiny writing on it. Says side effects include paranoia. She mumbled to herself. Both Naruto and Sakura just gawk while Sasuke feels his eye twitching. Niji and Tenten only sighed. Haku just blinked. I don't know how to react. Samly rolled her eyes. Focus on the fight. Omoi, that guy has already began his attack. He's holy crap, he shouted as he narrowly dodged the Karasu puppet, which flew right above him. Omoi's eyes narrowed as he dodged more strikes from Karasu. Flipping over the puppet, he saw a small opening and charged forward to Kankuro. The sand ninja swiftly moved his hands. Omoi could see blue threads of chakra dancing in the air. He felt something moving behind him at top speed. He planted his feet onto the ground and jumped, letting Karasu pass right beneath him, avoiding its attack. Let me guess, the fact that puppet master are long-range fighters. You figured going to close quarters would be a weakness for me, Kankuro said smugly. Sorry to inform that my Karasu can be faster than most ninjas, and I've got some tricks up my sleeve. You're wearing cat pajamas. What you going to do? Throw catnip at him? Naruto just could not stop himself, his words prompting his mother in her room watching Sakura and Haku to giggle, growing a tick mark at the remark from the blonde. Kankuro just focused on the fight at hand as his hands fly in front of him, his puppet coming up to block the sword strike from Omoi, who had gotten close due to Kankuro being slightly distracted. As he swiftly moved his hand, his puppet came up to block the sword strike from Omoi, who had gotten close enough to attack. The Kumonin dodged backwards when the puppet started to spin rapidly, its limbs flying around like a tornado. Omoi was forced backwards even further when Karasu leapt for him, blades coming out of flailing arms slicing through many directions. Jumping back, Omoi blocked the hidden arm blades rising to meet him with nothing but his wits about him. The young swordsman ducked the next charge from the puppet and jumped up soon after, flipping back and cutting down at the puppet. When it came back to Kankuro, the rags of the puppet were cut off. Some shreds of cloth floated to the ground. Dodging to the side, Omoi blocked the swinging body with his blade and sprinted for Kankuro, hoping to outrun the flying wooden construct under the Suna ninjas. Control. The notion was outrageous as well as foolhardy, as Kankuro's hands were fastened, the magic of his technique apparent before the audience when Karasu grabs hold of Omoi's arm and flung around, using momentum to toss the Kumonin to the ground and to the side. Damn, that guy is good, Naruto muttered as he and the others watched. Kakashi gave a nod. Never underestimate anyone. Suna is renowned for their puppet ninja for a reason. Classic long range against close range battle. It comes down to who's more experienced in their short time of being shinobi. Asuma spoke up, lighting cigarette. Karui growled, come on. Getting up quickly, Omoi had little time to react to the next blow as the puppet screamed at him from above with its clicking parts pushing to the side. He dodged the body slam the puppet attempted and instantly targets his opponent's weapon. Being a user of tools, Kankuro knew one thing: the weapon was only as good as the user. Take away the weapon and he's vulnerable. The puppet suddenly breaks apart and all of its limbs fly around Omoi like a tornado of death. Kankuro grins. Let's paint the floor with your blood. Sound better? Karasu's limbs fling at the Kumo swordsman, who jumped away from the initial strike and cuts the limbs away, slashing for every time Karasu's broken body tried to strike him. Samly rubbed her chin. I see no flaws in this Kankuro's moves. He trained hard to be this good. On the other side of the balcony, Tamari crosses her arms. That Kumo guy is good, but he can't Beat Kankuro. Baki nodded in agreement while Gaara only stared at Naruto and Yujito. The fight did not interest him. Damn it, Omoi grunted, can't keep this up forever, I need to get close and finish this. He reaches into his pouch and pulls up 3 smoke bombs. Hiruzen nods approvingly. This is interesting, these kids just keep getting better and better. Jiraiya smirks. Omoi quickly tried to close the distance between himself and Kankuro. The puppeteer smirks and quickly moved Karasu to intercept him all. Limbs assembling the puppet's body once more. Omoi throws the smoke bombs just as he feels the puppet approaching. They explode into a large gray cloud covering nearly the entire lower portion of the arena. Shit, the sand Nin curses, can't see anything. He moves Karasu close to him for protection. Up on the balcony the others share similar thoughts. What's going on down there? Sakura murmured. Sasuke activates his Sharingan. Omoi is trying to get him from behind, he whispered so only his teammates heard him. The Rosette and Blonde mentally cheered for the Kimonin. The sound of a blade piercing through something reached their ears. The smoke cleared to reveal Omoi standing behind Kankuro, his sword piercing the puppeteer's stomach. Got him, Karui cheered. Wait, Yujito stopped her celebration, her cat-like blue eyes narrowing. Something's not right. On the other side of the stands she could see Temari smirking from Kankuro's midsection. Flows no blood, in fact the only thing they can see are splinters of. With the shock on Kankuro's face, or what looked like Kankuro vanishes when chips of wood fell off its face, the skin turning into shreds of cloth and tearing as the face of a puppet became visible. As Omoi sensed the danger of this, he tries to pull back only to be grabbed by the arms of the puppet, which looked like a weird anatomy on a human like Kankuro if it were truly him. The face turned to Omoi as he tries to pull back harder, and the puppet just made clicking sounds before Omoi sensed someone behind him. Looking back he saw the fist of the Suna ninja going for his jaw. As it hits his head recoils and turned to the puppet, whose head collides against the ninja's. The puppet's final strike pushes Omoi back and out of the puppet's clutches as he falls to the ground knocked out. Kankuro floated the puppet to rest on his back as he grins, looking to the people who doubted him. The puppet points to them with its head turned with Kankuro's. Don't underestimate a puppet master. Hey, was immediately on the scene as he knelt down to the unconscious Omoi. Omoi is unable to battle Wen or Sabaku no Kankuro. Quickly his team along with Naruto and Sakura ran down to check on their Kumo friend. Kankuro only smirked, which made Karui growl at him till she heard the low groan of her teammate waking up. How are you feeling? Yujito asked gently. Am I dead? His question prompted his red-haired teammate to smack him in the head. She didn't care if she only added more damage. What do you think, idiot? Well, you're here, so yeah, this must be hell. Kushina only sweat drops watching the red-haired Kumo girl smacking her teammate, and I thought Konoha was full of weirdos, all the while ignoring the dry look from Yugao. Temari grinned at her brother as he returned to the stands with the rest of their team. Good thing you won, you would have shamed the village. Otherwise so little faith in me, sis. He teased her right back. Come on, admit it, I did awesome back there. Pfft, against that guy, please. Beating somebody like him isn't an achievement, much less one that warrants praise. The killing intent coming off from Kumo's team was easily brushed off by Sunas. In fact, they reveled in antagonizing their opponents. Baki ordered his team to keep quiet and stop aggravating the competition. Samly too did the same. Don't let them get to you. You did your best, Omoi. Her gaze suddenly darkened, but your best was not good enough. I'm gonna have to rectify that. The lollipop chewer paled significantly. Ah shit, hey. You have it coming, Yujito scolded him with her arms crossed. Losing like that, shameful. The teams familiar with them chattered amicably amongst themselves, all the while Suna's team discussed the performance of Kankuro's fight. Gaara had barely paid attention. He had not even bothered to acknowledge his brother's presence with even a single look since he returned to their side, and this was all boring him terribly. He could feel the need to draw blood crawling up his spine like a shiver, but knew he had to contain himself and wait for his match. His eyes shifted back over to Uzumaki. That power he felt coming from the blonde during his match with that Oto Gen, and it felt familiar to him. He had smirked, if only faint, at the sight of seeing Uzumaki killing his opponent, but it had ended too quickly for his taste. The blonde should have made his opponent suffer more, tore his enemy's body apart, screaming in agony, reveling in the massacre of it. Gaara's thoughts were halted as the wall monitor came up with 2 new names: Sabaku no Gaara vs Ringo Kohei. At that, a dark smile formed on the Sunanin on the opposite side. Kohei cheered. About damn time, he chuckled as he popped his knuckles. Let's show these folks how it's really done. His 2 teammates did not share his enthusiasm. Do not underestimate him for a second, Haku said in her big sister-like tone. Seriously, Naruto leaned over beside the Hayatan user. Watch your ass. Remember the chat in the forest about that guy? Their concern was met with a roll of the eyes. Yes mom and dad, I will be careful with that. He leapt over the railing. Kushina kept her eyes on the screen. Kirigakure no Sato. They have come a long way from being the bloody mist, Yugao said, having had informed her sensei of the rebellion and new Kage ruling in the hidden Mist Village, a woman Kage, haha. Finally the redhead smirked proudly as though the achievement was her own. Was about time one held the title, and goes to show what we can do, ha. Indeed, her apprentice Kushina sniffed the air of smugness around her only got denser. I remember when I set out to become Hokage nearly did it too, but I passed it down. Sensei, who are you trying to fool here? Yugao deadpanned. I'm in the ANBU. Sarutobi-sama himself said he considered you for 1 second and then couldn't stop laughing for the next full minute. The smugness vanished as soon as it came. Well, you don't have to be so blunt about it, she grumbled. Chojuro adjusted his glasses and concerned beside Haku. Will he be okay? Zabuza lifted a brow listening to the conversation. Gaara being like you too. The swordsman saw his student looking at both Uzumaki and that knee from Kumo. He was missing something here, but shrugged it off. Kohei was no slouch, and after he put that brat through hell he could endure nearly anything. He had faith in the brat, not that he'd say it openly. He had an image. After all, Yujito crossed her arms but said nothing as she watched at the arena floor. Gaara had appeared via San Shunshin. Kohei kept his smirk. Let's see how badass you really are. Gaara smirked as he accepted the challenge. Show me Sabaku no Gaara versus Ringo. Kohei begin. Hey, leapt back. Kohei wasted no time. The brown-haired boy quickly pulled out his whip and swung. The air cracked as it impacted against Gaara, or rather the sand that had risen and quickly and absorbed the blow, sending ripples across its surface. Gaara just remained still with his arms crossed, staring impassively at his opponent. Already the initial excitement was dwindling. Kohei tisked in annoyance. He pulled back his weapon and struck again, this time from a different angle, all for the same result to happen once again. Sand rose up and protected the sand ninja. The Kirinin channeled his chakra through the whip from the handle to the tip, and all it did was increase the splash range of the sand. Gaara did not move, grunting in mounting frustration. Kohei's eyes took an edge as he took out 4 kunai with paper tags attached to them from his pouch and jumped high in the air and threw them. They embedded themselves on the ground around Gaara, far enough for his sand defense not to trigger. The tags began to burn and then they exploded. The observers shielded their faces from the blast, protecting their eyes from wind, dust and rubble caused by the explosion. Where Gaara stood there now was a cloud of smoke. Few felt particularly hopeful that simple tactic was enough to take out someone with Gaara's defensive capabilities. The grin on his siblings' faces only cemented that. The smoke soon cleared, revealing Gaara surrounded by walls of sand that had clearly taken the brunt of the explosions. Kohei looked at him stunned while the sand ninja frowned with disappointment and disgust. Is this honestly all you have to offer me at this point? You're barely worth killing, he rasped with frustration. The ninja from Kiri seethed through clenched teeth. Anger boiled from inside him, humiliated that his enemy wasn't even taking him seriously. Don't let him get to you, Kohei, Zabuza shouted from the stands, but Kohei barely heard him. Gaara's words resonated within him, stirring up old feelings he kept buried. To be told he wasn't worth anything, to be looked down like he was a disappointment, something unwanted, almost the same as saying he should have never been born in the first place. Kohei had heard those words plenty of time from his clan. The only thing he had to counter those ugly feelings were the memories he had of his mother, the sole person in his life who had never seen him as a mistake. So he had set to prove he wasn't one as a ninja of Kiri, one his village could be proud of. So he would distance himself from him. I'll show you. He'd take Gaara out with his own power, without ever relying on the one he inherited. The whip spun in the air, the revolutions becoming faster with each passing second. Lightning coated the weapon, sending showers of spark flying off into the air. The whip became a blur of movement and energy, a blue circular wall at his side. He shouted as he struck the air, cracking like thunder as the delivered a strike with the force of a storm. Surely this lightning-imbued element would triumph over his hand. Gaara remained still as the weapon came ever closer. His sand rose in a dense wall in front of him. The energy from the whip discharged all over the substance as it struck. The arcs of electricity licked at the ground as the sand spread, stopping any of the excessive energy from even touching him in the first place. Kohei stood there horrified. His best attack had failed utterly. Gaara looked at him with disgust, pathetic, and rose his arm. It happened so very fast the sand coalesced and came crushing down on the Kekkei Genkai with the force of a flying brick wall. Pain spread through his arm as a crack came from his right shoulder, the sand swiftly covering his body. You're weak, worthless, Gaara spoke in a bored manner. Insects like you are barely worth killing, but I'll make an exception. Why was someone like you even born? You stain our clan's honor by having the monster's blood in your veins. You're as worthless as that whore you call a mother. Words from the past, and as soon as words rang in Kohei's head over and over, he kept hearing the constant slander and hate from a village that did not want him, from people who cursed at him for the simple fact he existed at all, fearing he'd become just like him. Kohei's rage boiled more and more. He kept hearing those words in his mind. He snarled wildly, glaring at his opponent. However, he was not seeing Gaara, but a figure cloaked in shadow, cold, empty, pink, pupilless eyes staring at his own. I will never be like you, the Kekkei Genkai roared as everyone in the arena felt a tremor. Beneath them, pipes bursted through the walls and floor, firing out enormous Amounts of water like a geyser, even the very humidity in the room gathered and formed water out of thin air. All were in shock, but no more so than Gaara, as he was blasted by powerful streams of H2O. His sand was rendered useless as he was slammed into wall. The eyes of everyone present watched what had just transpired with varying degrees of surprise and awe. Temari's lip trembled, unable to comprehend what she saw. What happened? Did that guy just swat Gaara away like that? Kankuro muttered in disbelief. Baki swore under his breath. Gaara had never received an attack like that. He had never been hit. Sakura looked at Kohei with newfound astonishment. Her previous assessments about the boy and his capabilities took a dive out the window. That water manipulation, to be able to control water like that without any sort of hand sign, then his affinity for the element must be extraordinary. Naruto sharply turned to Haku and Chojuro, both as shocked as he was. Did you guys know he could do this? No, Haku stammered. Kohei had barely even shown proficiency with water element before Kakashi's gaze caught sight of Zabuza. The swordsman was frowning heavily at the sight. He didn't look as surprised as the others were. Kohei, he muttered. His tone was hard to describe even to the Hataki. Holy fuck, Kushina muttered under her breath as she looked wide-eyed along with her soul student. The redhead had only seen one person who wielded elemental chakra to such a degree, only with fire. It was like this boy was like a water version of Tsukiko Bachan, as if that boy was the Nidaime Hokage reborn. Yugao said breathlessly, and all well, that guy was better. Example, yeah. Kohei barely registered his fall back to arena floor as Gaara's sand broke off of him in water-soaked lumps. He let out a snarl as he held his broken right arm as exhaustion coursed through his whole body. The water soon receded as Gaara hit the floor. His body simply wouldn't move. I got worked up. Shit, slowly, ever so slowly. Gaara sturdy prompted himself up on shaking arms. This sensation, this was pain. It had been so long since he had felt physical pain, so long. Teal eyes glared at his opponent. Gaara stood up, sand already forming around his body, once more absorbing the wetness on his person. As his personal sand barrier regenerated, he took one slow step, then another and another, until he was walking towards the fallen Kohei, killing intent radiating off of him in waves. His exhaustion and weakened state, coupled by the strong intent coming off from Gaara, was too much for the young Kirinin. He let out a soft breath as he finally passed out. Winner Sabaku no Gaara Heiate was quick to declare him the victor, yet Gaara did not stop. He continued walking towards him with murder in his eyes. He needed to draw his blood, needed kill him for mother. He needed it, only then was he alive. Sand began to swirl around him. Enough, you already won. The Jinchuriki ignored the proctor and watched with irritation as various ninja came down in a flash to the arena floor. Standing in his way, Kiri of course, but also Kumo and Konoha, the two of note. Uzumaki and Nii stood at the forefront. They both, who felt so strangely familiar, were staring him down, along with the rest daring to oppose him from fulfilling his existence. The Kiri Jounin took his student in his arms protectively, almost challenging him to try something. Fine, if they wanted death so much, then all the better. He raised his arm, and that is quite enough. And hand was on his shoulder. That bore repeating. A hand was on his shoulder. Someone was touching him. He turned his head to meet the wizened gaze of the third Hokage staring down at him sternly. That he had slipped in so close to him without his defense activating spoke volumes of the man's prowess. Swiftly his sand acted up. Gaara and Obaki shouted, terrified at the thought of his student willingly or not attacking the Kage of the foreign village. The Sandaime narrowed his eyes. Suddenly chakra flooded the room so vast and dense it cracked the ground around the old ninja with its sheer pressure. His sand was blasted away so effortlessly in every direction, it was like someone had dumped a river's worth of water on them. It was heavy and so suffocating. Gaara made a choking gasp as those eyes bore into him once more. So powerful. I believe you already won. It is no longer necessary to continue, the Kage said as he let go of the young boy's shoulder. Gaara wordlessly continued to stare at him, feeling something he could not quite describe. It felt familiar, off fear. It's been too long since he had felt afraid too. He merely marched towards his place by a calm-looking Jiraiya, his eyes meeting that of each shinobi that was there on the arena. In turn, after what felt a small eternity, everyone could breathe again. Holy shit, Shikamaru muttered, eyes wide as they stared at the Hokage with a sense of awe. He certainly wasn't the only one doing it at the moment. Ino, the poor thing, had fallen onto her backside, taking in as much air as she could after their leader's display. Not that the others were faring much better with shaky legs as they all calmed themselves. Yikes, Dadasuma muttered to himself, feeling the cold sweat run down his neck. Overdid it a bit, don't you think? Well, Gigi still has it, Kushina muttered warily before she turned to Yugao. But what the hell was with that kid? The ANBU captain shrugged. We haven't heard anything from Kiri in a long time. Even now we only get tiny details here and there. The Kiri rebellion and the eventual overthrow of the Yonde Mizuki. Mitarumi is making sure no one knows the full state of her village. That was the smart thing to do. So no rival village would invade thinking they had become an easy target. It went to show this Lady Kage was competent in her job. Hiruzen hummed to himself as the ANBU patched up the arena to least making it fight able. His eyes glanced up to Zabuza, who only glanced back before turning to his team beside him. Jiraiya rubbed his chin. Well, that wasn't something you see every day. That Gaki from Kiri had one hell of trump card. He could rival, if not surpass, Tobirama Sensei if he ever masters that element. But also I saw something in all my years I thought I'd never see. 3 foreign teams coming together, such a concept he never once imagined he'd ever see while still alive. Not after all the bloodshed and wars that ravaged the nations, but to actually see 3 teams from 3 separate villages, 2 being enemies. Such a thing was completely unheard of. Heard those kids banded together in the forest. The Toad Sage commented, the fact it happened at all surprises me. Fighting together for survival was a quick way of building camaraderie even among the least likely allies, but for them to actually come to the defense of another once their truce was over, well, that was pretty damn improbable. Naruto, he could see it, that boy had a heart like his father. But as for the rest, Kumo in particular, he'd sooner believe there were yokai living among them. Their swift response to protect the Kohei kid, that they were at least driven by a sense of honor to defend a former comrade, enough for them to jump in their bodies moving before they even realized what they were doing. Honor among ninja, huh? He muttered loud enough for his sensei to hear. That was something rare to find in their line of work. Honor was hard to gauge. There was honor in serving the village and fighting for the country, but for some foreign ninja that by all rights would have been stabbed in the back once he ceased being useful. Jiraiya had seldom seen it. The old Kage gave his student a look before losing himself in his thoughts. Honor, trust. Was it truly people for villages to cooperate like that? The alliance with Suno was not exactly on steady ground at the moment. Their daimyo were hiring Konoha more and more often, much to the displeasure of the Saiyan shinobi. Hiruzen looked at the red-headed boy. He knew what he was, the Suna Jinchuriki. There was just so many things wrong with the poor child. His gaze then went over the other genin from his village, and the rest who were worrying over young Kohei's unconscious form. Bless their hearts, they haven't grown up as enemies with them. That were the adults' own grudges, and if they didn't do anything, then the next generation would eventually grow up to hate each other just as well. The Sarutobi found that image before him to be very precious and made him strive to protect it. Perhaps a bit of trust and honor between villages could do wonders. He mused as he ran a hand of his beard. Oh, I know that look, Jiraiya said, amused. What's on your mind? Thinking that Kiri must be in need of supplies after what they went through. That made his student pause. That'll be tricky though. Reaching out to Kiri would be infinitely easier than Kumo, but convincing their new Kage it's not some kind of trap will take some effort. It will be worth it. We have 2 things. Kirigakure needs resources and allies. The old Kage was resolute in his tone as he lit his pipe. Jiraiya slowly gave a nod. This will be one for the record books. If nothing else, after 15 minutes the arena was finally repaired as well as awaken. Kohei with a sling holding up his arm. The young genin was ghostly quiet as his team along with Team 7 and Team Kumo were asking all kinds of questions. Finally Zabuza was losing his patience. Alright brats, knock it off, he doesn't want to talk, so stop nagging. Alright. Karui dryly lifted a brow. You're a ray of sunshine, aren't you? For Haku, she tilted her head looking at her sensei/father figure. That looked right into her eyes. She could tell there was something he was hiding, but she wasn't going to get anything out of him right now. Never mind her teammate who stared down at the arena floor. Kohei was very silent. He even refused to look at anyone in the face right now. The display of power had somehow been horribly shameful for him, and Haku could not fashion why. It was some reason her teammate had clearly meant to keep this secret, but the reasons behind it were a mystery to her. It was clear Kohei would not talk about it, so she decided to give it time. If he wanted to reach out to his teammates, then he'd do so eventually, and she'd be there for when he felt ready to speak. Coughing a bit, hey, got people's attention now that the arena is fixed. Let us begin soon. Names came up on the monitor. Masumi Tsurugi versus Chojuro. The fire name belonged to one lone Konoha ninja on the opposite balcony where Suna and Oto have been standing. Kabuto's last remaining teammate, who wore a similar outfit much like his team, along with a mask he wore around his mouth that hung to around his neck, and forehead protector which he wore like a bandana. His rimless glasses shined as he eyed the Kekkei Genkai. Before leaping over the railing for Chojuro, he took a long deep breath before following suit. Kohei still remained quiet but watched his nervous teammate beside Haku close by. Naruto tilts his head, been meaning to ask, but what's with that sword on his back? Zabuza only chuckled evilly as he crossed his arms across his bare chest. Watch and see, Uzumaki, it's gonna be a bloody mess, could you ever possibly tone the psycho out of you for a day? Sakura drawled. Oh, the screeching girl is gonna tell me to tone down my attitude, the swordsman sarcastically droned. Yeah, next you're gonna say the blondie of your team to tone down on the ramen I hear he loves so much, or the Uchiha to stoop brooding. It just ain't how it works, girlie, you are too bloodthirsty at times. Sabusa-sama, Haku agreed, and you brats are not nearly bloodthirsty enough, Sabusa proclaimed with irritation. Oh no, you're all about making nice with each other, Naruto deadpan. Making nice is what pretty much saved your life the first place. Oh, stuff it, you brat, I stand by what I said. You want to scare your enemies away before you fight them, project a good dose of killing intent, and your mission will be done before you realize it. Or if they don't run away, are instead paralyzed, then it just means they're easy targets. Nearly worked on you last time. How did they ever give you a team? Kiri is fucked up. It's not the bloody mist anymore, but you can't change something like that in such short a time. It's still fucked up, so you work with what you have. Believe me, I didn't want to have a team either, but that by the Mizuki was very convincing. Haku sighed. Your team is so lucky, Sakura drawled. Whatever, he rolled his eyes. Let me just watch Chojuro's fight and shut fights over Sasuke, casually commented. Various pairs of eyes blinked simultaneously. Wait, what? Naruto said. Indeed, Chojuro had his weapon's chakra shaped into that of a giant hammer. His pose indicated he had just swung the blunt chakra construct, and some feet in front of him laid his opponent Tsurugi, glasses broken and nose bleeding, likely broken as well. Knockout. Hey 8, announced winner Chojuro of Kirigakure. Haku's head slowly tilted to the side. Did we just miss the fight? Kohei only rolled his eyes. That's the Hiramakiri. Kushina gushed in almost childlike wonder, having seen the match. So it really does shapeshift. Databane. A bashful Chojuro was met with cheers as he came back to his team. Damn, for shy guy you can kick some ass. Karui grinned, making Kiri team lightly blush. Thank you, Karui-san. Kakashi looked from his book. You were impressive, kiddo, wasting no time. Not that anybody needed to be told who was next. Karui soon became serious as she leapt down from the balcony, popping his wrists. Sokka gave a faint nod to his jounin, who smirked back, leaping down the Oto Genin smiled viciously. Let's see how you scream. For her part, Karui did not look either impressed or intimidated at her opponent. She simply tapped her foot, waiting for the proctor. Final match of the preliminaries. Hey 8 announced as rose his hand. Karui of Kumo versus Saku Abomi. Begin. The moment the proctor moved back, the Chunin aspirants took action. Karui took out her sword. As Saku lifted his arms, the inner hollow tubes priming as air pressure build up. Blasts of highly concentrated air fired directly at her. Karui swiftly moved to the side and dodged, letting the air pressure pass by harmlessly. Got you. Saku fired off again, only for Karui to jump away. The air wave clashed against a wall, lightly cracking it and creating small fissures on its surface. Is this all you can do? Run away? Karui was too much of a hothead. She knew that, much to her shame. Honestly, it wasn't her fault. Her teammate infuriated her so easily, but when on a fight, Karui knew better than to let her emotions blind her. That is not to say she didn't make mistakes. Her temper would get the better of her, but Kumo's harsh standards assured that their shinobi would head on the battlefield with a cold, calculated, and detached mind, pragmatism at its finest, and Karui was no different. If anything, her own temper gave her an advantage. Sometimes if she didn't let it blind her, it allowed her to strike harder and endure more, but also it gave her insight on how to fight people like her. People too hot-headed to fight rationally. She knew how to piss them off. Those arms of his, there's no way tubes that small could handle blasts of high-level techniques continuously firing. They had to have a limit. If she could get him to overload them, it was a reckless plan, and she had no idea if it'd work, but she couldn't get close enough to do any significant damage. No choice then. You talk a big game for someone who had to mutilate his arms to even stand a chance against another genin. A vein throbbed on his forehead. What was that, you bitch? I said you're a failure. Karui smirked. Those tubes in your arms, the only way you ever could be useful to your village were by them installing weapons into your own body. Shinobi go for all advantages they can get, but when you couldn't show any worth on your own, then you're not fit to call yourself a ninja. At the balcony, the teams watched incredulously. Why is she goading him like this? Naruto muttered. Those Oto ninja are just looking for an excuse to kill any of us. Kiba said in disbelief. Does she actually want to piss him off? Knowing that Yujito turned to their temporary team leader, she really needs to rein in her attitude. True, but this time the Nibi Jinchuriki could have sworn Sanwi's lips twitched ever so slightly upward in a smile, but the thought of the cold fellow teenager smiling was something straight out of the realm of fantasy, so Yujito attributed it to her own imagination. She seems to actually been thinking things through. Zaku's form trembled with rage to hear that low-level cloud whore talk down to him, saying he was worth nothing as a shinobi, that he was not useful to Lord Orochimaru, the man who had given him everything, who had given him this power. He'll kill her, he'll kill her, he'll kill her. A scream that befitted more an animal than a human escaped from his lips. As he once more brought up his arms, he channeled his chakra, all of it, into the tubes inside his limbs as to deliver the most powerful blast he had ever fired. There would be no trace of her, no piece of flesh, not even a single dust molecule of bone. He'd tear her apart so utterly there would not be a body left to take back to Kumo. All the while the leader of Oto observed with disappointment as his subordinate's anger got the better of him. Fool, he should have known better than to let a mere girl goad him like that. He should have known better than to use his modifications so thoughtlessly without regard for consequences. A single word from him could have calmed Zaka down, but honestly he had little use for ninja who couldn't use their heads. This would be a learning experience for him. Zaku gathered the air pressure as the sound vibrations made his arms tremble. He could feel all the bones in his arms shudder, his chakra points burn due all the sheer energy he was channeling. But Zaku did not care. He would make her pay for her words, for daring to insult him. Dosu had been a fool and kin a whore, but he would prove himself worthy of being Orochimaru-sama shinobi. His preparations ready, he fired off his attack and his arms exploded. The majority of the genin and a few jounin winced as the Oto genin let out a painful roaring shrill as he fell to the ground. Karui had appeared beside him, thankfully knocking him out with hard kick. The Kumo Kunoichi sighed before cringing at Zaku's arms, or lack of them. From the elbows down, Zaku is unable to battle. Winner is Karui. Height spoke up as medical Nin was quick to take the injured Oto genin as the remaining genin stood in front of the Hokage with Jiraiya at his side. Some feel both elation and exhaustion. They could finally get some rest in a bed instead of being in that accused forest and this bloody tower. Still a few were curious as to why Anko was holding a medium-sized box with a hole big enough for a hand at her sides. Were both Height and Ibiki. For those of you who made it, I congratulate you, but test is not over. Not yet, the Hokage spoke, hiding a smirk upon seeing a few of the young teens groan in irritation. Now you must take a number from the box. Whoever has the closest number to yours will be your opponent in the third stage, so it's like prelims, one-on-one competition. Yujito spoke up beside her. Team Aruzan gave a nod. Correct, Miss Ni. However, the final exam will be in 1 month. You may take that time to rest, strategize, and train for your coming opponent. Listen up. Ibiki soon took over with a firm shout. When we call out your names, get up here and grab a ball. With that, Height begun to call off names from his clipboard, and the young Chunin hopefuls came over taking a ball. The results were unexpected for some. Sakura felt a chill creep up her spine as she wearily gazed over towards her opponent. Niji only gazed back at her with an impassive apathy. First match, Sakura Haruno versus Niji Hyuga. Height spoke, writing on his clipboard slit feline blues and chocolate brown, both shown with mutual respect. For the other second match, Yujito Ni versus Hakuyuki, bouncing on the balls of his feet. Lee couldn't stop smiling while Naruto wasn't sure he was going to have fun or be totally screwed. Third match, Rock Lee versus Naruto Uzumaki. Fourth match, Sasuke Uchiha versus Sabaku Nogara. As the proctor said the names, the Uchiha stared with determination while the Ichibi Jinchuriki showed little interest in return. Temari's eyes were predatory as she smirked over to a nervous Chojuro. Fifth match, Sabaku no Temari versus Chojuro. Akanai spun in Tenten's fingers as she glared back at a vicious smirking puppet master. Sixth match, Tenten Igarashi versus Sabaku no Kankuro. Karui came to a realization as she counted the number of people who would pass to the third exam. Wait, there's nobody left for me. We're an odd number. The finals are tournament rounds. Ibiki explained, we can't accommodate just because of one person out. You'll fight whoever wins the first match, so that meant either Pinky or the Hyuga boy. Karui honestly wasn't too happy about fighting an opponent who would already be tired and weakened after their first match, but she had no room to complain, and so we closed the second stage of the Chunin exams. You have 1 month, make it count. The Sandame spoke with resolution, which made every genin nod. Kushina let out a sigh as she lay back on her bed. Well, now that is over, can I get the hell out of here now? The redhead wine making Yugao and the other ANBU Sayokage-sama said, you still need to stay a day more for observation. Fortunately, the position of your heart won't cause any trouble, but they need to make sure the rest of your organs are in the right place. The sole student of the Red Death spoke back dryly, having to have explained this several times already. Of course, that only made Kushina whine louder. Time skip. Can someone fully explain to me the need or purpose in waking up before even the goddamn sun is up? For of all things, a meeting. Tsum growled with tired irritation as she rested her elbow on the clan head seating table with her cheek in her palm. The majority of those present shared the thought, but unlike the Inazuka clan head, they kept quiet. It had been rather sudden and out of the blue, as ANBU had summoned only the major clan leaders and the elders for an impromptu meeting ordered by the Hokage. While it was not called an outright emergency, the timing was still suspicious, mostly to Shikaku Nara, who was currently sipping a cup of freshly brewed coffee beside a yawning Choza. Akimichi now Sumonoichi said diplomatically, Hokage-sama would not have called us here if it wasn't for something important. The wild-maned woman growled. Is the village under attack? No. Then why the hell can't I go back to sleep? One would imagine you Inuzuka to be early risers. The ever-collected and nearly monotone voice of Shibi Aburaim intoned next to her. What with all the noise, your kennels filled with young pups make every day? Rather than barking an angry retort, the Inuzuka matriarch just look at him with surprised. When did you get here? I've been here all this time. If one were to put more attention, they'd pick up the slight tone of annoyance lacing his voice. Pretty sure I would have heard or smelled you before if you were. The Inuzuka prided themselves over their animal-like senses for a reason. Shibi merely looked at her behind his shades, and Sum got the feeling she had put her foot in her mouth. Once again a few of the clan heads rolled their eyes at the antics that were far too much of a common occurrence for their tastes, especially to the head of the Hyuga clan, who merely sat with his arms crossed and his eyes closed, projecting the image of cold and composed aristocrat he had perfected over the years. It was only when the new arrivals appeared that he opened his eyes and greeted them. Honored elders. He politely inclined his head, a gesture soon followed by the others. The aged visage of elders Hamura and Koharu was a familiar sight for the clan heads. As the Hokage's advisors, they were closely involved in the village's day-to-day business and its various operations. Though sometimes differing in ideology and methods to their leader, their opinion was highly valued by the Hokage. Regardless, it was the third elder that put the clan heads a bit on edge. Half of his face covered in bandages, an arm hidden inside his robes, which often lead people to believe it was no longer as usable as it was in the past due to injuries sustained over a lifetime of service. He walked by supporting his free left on a cane. His visible eye carried a hardened edge that seemed to pierce nearly anything. One couldn't be blamed to compare his visage to that of an old war hawk still on the prowl. Even after many years of battle, Danzo Shimura was often a rare sight in meetings with the clans. The Shimura clan was under the leadership of his son, having long since passed on the role to operate behind the scenes with some of the village's most questionable activities, and coming from ninjas that spoke a lot of what the old war hawk did not, that they themselves were much aware of whatever activities Danzo conducted in service to the village. The elder was just rarely involved in village meetings, so Shikaku started looking at the two elders often found at the Hokage's side. Do you know why Sarutobi-sama has called us? We in fact do not, Hamura replied tensely. Whatever is going on, it wasn't brought up to us beforehand. No one had noticed. Danzo's grip on his cane had gotten tighter while his face remained unreadable. He was not pleased being left in the dark with zero information given to him. Whatever was going on, Hiruzen was playing something close to the chest. His grip relaxed as he simply waited. Along with others, the door to the council room opened as the village leader entered. I thank you all for coming at such an hour. Forgive my bluntness, Hokage-sama. Some unsurprisingly spoke up first. But if this is not an emergency, why the hell did we all have get out of nice warm beds before the ass crack of dawn? Wonder how she will react with who's waiting outside. Hiruzen dryly mused as he half wished he had a camera. When seeing everyone's faces, he cleared his throat. Well, Sumdano, please allow me to introduce the reason I have called everyone here. Enter. All eyes went towards the door as if opened slowly. Once open, Shikaku, who was in the middle of drinking his coffee, soon spat it out coughing. Who came through the threshold and entered the room donning simple ANBU pants and a muscle shirt was a person everyone in the room had thought they would never see again till their eventual deaths. For Kushina, this was a really awkward moment, and felt like hiding somewhere upon seeing the expressions of people who to her she's just seen a few days ago, when in fact it had been 12 years for all of them. The redhead gave a meek chuckle as she waved a hi as she had literally stood up from his seat. His rigid cold persona vanished with utter disbelief in its stead. Kushina, been a while. Nice tension breaking skills there, Kushina, she berated herself. The sheer utter shock had pretty much shut down all cognitive functions in everyone's brain. Their minds simply could not comprehend that they were seeing right now. It was an impossibility. Kushina was dead, and that's something all of them were painfully aware of, but here she was alive, standing in front of them, looking exactly as she did last time they saw her, sans the large pregnant belly. If this was the Hokage's idea of a joke, then it was a very cruel one. This had to be an imposter, but the notion was quickly rejected in favor of logic. The Hokage would not have brought this individual before them unless he was 100% sure this woman was the real deal, and yet Kushina died that day. Minato had died with her. They has lost two dear friends that horrible day all those years ago. Two more names added to the far too filled monument of their brave fallen, along with all those who lost their lives that night. To have her in front of them was possibility that frightened them. Hope was terrifying. After all, it was Shikaku who first managed to ask what was in everyone's minds. How is this possible? How are you alive? Well, Kushina rubbed her arm awkwardly. I guess that I should start with Tsukiko. Bachan, you see, years ago before I even came to Konoha she gave me a scroll and then she went on a long explanation about an extremely powerful scroll developed by the legendary goddess of Fuinjutsu herself. Honestly, the possibility of such a scroll was a bit too far-fetched for them to believe, but then again this was the Tsukiko, a woman whose exploits was up there with Hashirama and Madara. Indeed, they had met her before, in their early childhood, on a visit from the Seal Master on their village. Years ago, the 200-year-old woman was a legend for a reason. The adults couldn't stop praising her sheer knowledge on the art of sealing, and how many seals used nowadays were designs that came from the woman herself. If Tsukiko Uzumaki created something like that, then it fell into the realm of possibility. A scroll like that to have existed in the first place, that woman had left an impression. It may also have to do with her famed crusade, in which she would personally spank misbehaving children who had committed some act of naughtiness or other in her presence to install some discipline into them. Few were spared the wrath of her bent knee and smacking hand. Indeed, legends had it she had spanked all previous Kages in their youth. The reality of the situation finally dawned on them. "You're here," Inoichi whispered loud enough to be heard, his voice thick with emotion. "You're actually here." Kushina smiled warmly, and it was such a comforting sight. "Sorry, I've been away for so long too." Soon that was not enough. Having climbed over the table, she strode over the redhead, towering over her by a few inches, and casted a judgmental gaze upon her, which Kushina received unflinching. The Inuzuka sniffed, catching the scent coming off from the supposedly returned Uzumaki. It was the same, downright to the last detail, that was Kushina's scent, but there was only one way she would know for sure. Her knuckles of her right hand popped as her fist slammed into Kushina's face. Tsumchosa rose from his seat. However, the redhead rubbed her jaw before spatting out some blood. She grinned right back at Tsum. "That fist of yours has gotten soft, bitch." "Oh, that's the Kushina I know." Only she could take a punch like that and have a grin that was as feral as an Inuzuka's. In return, Tsum grinned back. "Who you calling soft, bitch?" She patted Kushina's belly. "That little scroll might have saved your cute little ass, but that ass is far from fighting shape. This is a soft belly. I had just given birth to Naruto." "You dumbass, how was your figure after popping out Hana and Kiba? 12 years and you're still a stupid mutt. What you call me, you cunt?" Tsum snarled in Kushina's face, who snarled right back, "You want me to fucking repeat, bitch? I dare to repeat it." The majority within the room collectively sweat dropped at the display. It was like Kushina had never left. The interactions of those two had always been that strange friendship rivalry of theirs, and they basically had picked up where they had left off. However, the Sandaime cleared his throat loudly enough to get the hot-headed ladies to stop arguing. "You two can get back to your cat fight later." Tsum let out a light growl at the word cat. Trying to gather themselves in this situation was a monumental task, but they took their seats once again so they could properly carry on their business. Celebration could come later. The Uzumaki took a moment to look at all her friends' faces. They were similar to how she last saw them, but could tell there were more signs of aging. Once again, knowing just how long she had been away was a disturbing thought. "When exactly were you unsealed?" Inoichi asked. "Couple of days ago," Kushina replied. "Little before the prelims began, actually. Hiruzen took over. Of course, I kept this matter private until I could be certain she was in fact our Kushina. We kept her hidden in the Forest Towers medical facilities." "Understandable." Shikaku nodded. "So I suppose the matter at hand now is, what do we do now?" He waved a hand at the redhead. "Do we just tell everyone you're back? This is an unusual situation." Koharu's spook up hands joined over the table as she mused over the long-term changes this would bring if Kushina rejoins our forces. The Uzumaki in question didn't like how she said rejoins, as though she had actually left service on her own. "Then eventually the other nations will know. Now more than ever with the Chunin exams going, it is an inevitability." Hiruzen acknowledged. "Eventually all will know, but I believe this works to our advantage." He gathered their interest with those words. "One of our strongest is back. Let our enemies think carefully before provoking us now." Kushina tried not to smirk too proudly at his words. She failed. "You hear that, Tsum? One of our strongest?" The Inuzuka matriarch bared her teeth and growled, to which Kushina just smirked more smugly. Both women quickly backed down like ashamed children once the Hokage glared at them. "As I was saying," he grumbled, "Kushina's return is a boon to this village in more ways than one. My advice is that we just go with it immediately. Let the rumors spread." As Kushina walks our streets once again, the voice of someone who had been quiet so far suddenly spoke up, one that soured Kushina's mood immediately. "And what do you propose we tell the populace? We can't just reveal to them she cheated death by use of an extremely powerful scroll." Danzo God, she had hoped that old Warhawk wasn't still around, but because the universe hated her here, he was taking part of the Meeting this meant he was still overseeing those wet work operations of his Kushina was no stranger to such black ops, having been in the ANBU for years, but Danzo's methods were extreme. He casually disregarded the lives of their shinobi and wasn't afraid of discarding them like one did a broken tool. The elder was vocal about Kushina mastering the Kyuubi's power to act as a cold and obedient killing machine for the village, which had earned the Uzumaki's despise she didn't even want to imagine. What he would have done had he gotten his hands on her son. His extremely aggressive doctrine was just trouble waiting to happen before he suddenly made the village a new enemy just because he took matters into his own hands and acted out of paranoia. It had nearly happened in the past. Why the old man kept this warmonger around was a mystery to her. We say that she has been lying low since the Kyuubi attack, doing covert operations. Hiruzen proposed certain circumstances led her to take an active duty. Once again Chosa's head shook in disbelief. That's it, she was hiding, and now she isn't. That's what we're telling our people. It's better than the alternative. We don't want to give the other nations more reason to seek the Uzumaki's secrets. What else could do they to her clan that they hadn't already? Kushina thought bitterly but didn't voice it. Instead she said, only the ANBU know what really happened, along with a few people I can trust with this knowledge. At that everyone slowly agreed with the Hokage's reasoning. Kushina noticed Inoichi looked conflicted as he rubbed his hands. Inoichi, what is it? The Yamanaka head looked up at his old friend before sighing. I'm trying to come up with some way to ask this without drawing out painful memories, especially since to you it's only been a few days. Hayashi closed his eyes. There isn't an easy way. Asking what we all want to know. Kushina's violet eyes casted downwards to the floor. What happened 12 years ago? After a long silence she explained the horrible events of October 10th. She gave every detail of the individual who she spoke with pure venom and hatred in her tone, but what sparked everyone's attention was the revelation the masked man had a Sharingan. Hiruzen raised his hand before anyone could speak. I want no one to jump to any conclusions. Whoever this masked man is, we do not know if he is indeed an Uchiha or not, nor can we say it was the Uchiha clan or simply one man who orchestrated the events of 12 years ago. You still should have kept watch on the Uchiha regardless. Danzo spoke in a low tone. Hiruzen only glared back in response. Neither talked, but from the Sandame's eyes they read this is neither the time nor the place. The old warhawk remained quiet before noticing the intense glare from the Uzumaki redhead. He was fully aware of the strong friendship between Kushina and the late Makoto Uchiha, from their time in the academy to being teammates under Tsukumo Ataki, and by the fury that blazed in the redhead's eyes it was like she was almost daring him to imply her best friend was involved. Shikaka rubbed his chin. I don't like the sound of this guy being able to teleport past our defenses, never mind able to phase through solid objects. Essentially this guy can go anywhere. We need to update the barrier seals, if that could even work against his skills in the first place. That's what catches your attention the most, Sum said incredulously. What about the fact he controlled a fucking Bijou, something only the Shodai and Madara Uchiha could do? Shibi huffed. I don't think anyone here is ignoring that particular fact, Sum. For the moment our Bijou is secured, so I find myself worrying that our current defense systems are woefully ineffective against him. It was hard to tell what Shibi was feeling, but that was part of the course for the Aburame. The Kyuubi had appeared right in the middle of the village. The masked man must have summoned it himself, which means he got past the sensing barrier. Kushina did a double take. The sensing, oh my gods, you people are still using that thing. The clan heads blinked at her outburst. Gigi, what the hell? I told you that thing wouldn't work. It's the most poorly functional and inefficient sensing system I've seen. I told you it would take decades to even make something like that remotely close to operable. The Hokage had the decency to look embarrassed. The Kyuubi attack left us severely weakened and vulnerable. We had to use every option available to us, even if the quality wasn't exactly up to par. Chosa muttered nervously. The sensing barrier doesn't work. Oh, it works when it wants to, Kushina exclaimed. If that thing truly worked, it'd be going off every time a bird flies over the village, because it's an unauthorized passage. Honestly, that barrier picks up intruders at random. Sometimes it barely manages to pick up one if the chakra signature isn't big enough. Hiruzen lit his old pipe. I'll have that matter dealt with. In the meantime, we find out whatever information we can about this masked man with a Sharingan, whoever he is. I promise I'll do more than find information. Sum snarled, almost like a feral hound. He'll pay for all the lives he ruined. He'll be screaming when I'm done. From all their gazes, Kushina could see her old friends all looked ready to spill blood. They finally had a real target, the one responsible for that tragedy 12 years ago, but they would to wait in line, because as far as the Uzumaki swordswoman was concerned, that bastard belonged to her. Naruto sat quietly in the Hokage's office as he looked down at the floor while Jiraiya gazed out the window to Konoha. It had gotten eerie quiet since the Toad Sage, as he revealed himself being his godfather as well as his father's sensei, but explained why he was never there as he was the village's spymaster. In truth, Jiraiya felt relieved letting it out, but it was just so damn unnerving not hearing a single word from the brat. Being so silent for such a long time was extremely out of character. "Are you mad?" The Gama Senin cocked his head slightly and glanced behind him. The blonde's gaze remained at the floor. "I wanna be, but I can't. Being angry won't change a damn thing, and I get it. You couldn't lug around a kid going all over the nations for missions from Gigi. I was an orphan too growing up, so believe me, I do understand that kind of loneliness." Jiraiya's tone was solemn as he turned around, seeing the surprised look from Blonde. "It's not an easy life, but it toughened us up, taught us not to take bullshit when we see it at that. Naruto could agree to so. What now? Now I know your mom wants to train you, but she also needs to get back into fighting shape, so both me and Kushina will be working on you and Pinky while Kakashi helps me with getting Kushina into fighting shape again." Training with his mother sounded amazing. That was what a ninja parent was supposed to do with their child, right? He was still new to this whole having a mother thing, so honestly he was swimming in uncharted waters. Don't get him wrong, he was beyond happy to have his mother in his life, but this new experience was also somewhat frightening to him. He had no idea what to do as a son, but hey, he never backed down from a challenge. It was at that moment that the door opened and the Hokage and Kushina stepped inside. "Man, I'm beat," she drawled. "I agree with you," Hiruzen grunted. This entire affair was a taxing one. "Everything went well?" Naruto asked. Kushina flashed a toothy grin. "Yep, got to meet with old friends. After all, you spent about a half an hour in there." Jiraiya thumbed back to the window as the morning sun glowed in the sky. "Think that's a new record for you?" Hiruzen rolled his eyes as he took his seat at his desk just as Kushina sat down beside her son on one of the sofas and Anbu appeared kneeling. "Hokage-sama." "Hey Iguro." Kushina smiled with a small wave, to which the Anbu glanced with a nod and muttered, "Captain." The old Kage lifted a brow. "Something to report." A young girl roughly Naruto-san's age came forward expressing she had information regarding Orochimaru. Everyone grew still. Jiraiya narrowed his eyes. "You sure could be a trap." Iguro lifted his head. "We brought the girl to an interrogation room. She gave every detail she knew about the Hibi-Sannin." Hiruzen rubbed his beard. "Bring her to me." Hi. The Anbu vanished via Shunshin. "Well, that is out of the blue." Kushina crossed her arms, leaned back on the sofa. "What should we do?" "Nothing until I meet this young lady and she explains herself to me." "Should I be here?" Naruto asked. "This sounds above my pay grade." "In it is." Hiruzen agreed, "but considering the interest Orochimaru has shown on you and Sasuke, perhaps it's better if you two hear what she has to say." With that he gave the young blonde his permission to stay. It wasn't long before the Anbu returned, this time bringing with him a young girl wearing spectacles and a headband from Kusa. Her red eyes nervously shifted to the people present, lingering on Kushina for a moment, as she seemed to tremble, clearly overwhelmed by the presence of such renowned and powerful individuals. "Lord Hokage." She bowed at the waist as was proper the etiquette. "Lord Jiraiya," and she paused at seeing the older redhead Kushina Uzumaki. The woman presented herself. "I see." Something seemed to glint in her eyes. Recognition, nostalgia, whatever it was, it quickly vanished as she looked at Naruto. "We meet again." Oh, he perked up as his gaze shifted. "Why, yeah, hiya, you wait." The girl's eyes narrowed. "You do remember me, right?" "Iowa." "No," he confessed. "Sorry, I guess you didn't make an impression." She face faulted at his words. Jiraiya smacked his own face at his lack of tact with women while Kushina was openly giggled. The girl composed herself as she glared at the apologetic blonde. "Forest of Death, giant bear." Naruto's eyes sparked with recognition upon those two words. He paused as he remembered why the girl was here as he turned serious. "You know about Hibi team?" She liked that nickname, but focused as she nodded and looked back to the Sanding. "Yes, my name is Karen. I also need to inform you of what I told the Anbu. Otogakure is under Orochimaru's control." Everyone's eyes shot open as Iguro nodded in confirmation to her words. "He created that hidden village." Now that was one hell of nugget of information. However, the old Kage gave the young girl a long scrutinizing gaze. "You're being rather forthcoming with all this. You know full well Orochimaru is a traitor of Konohagakure." "I am aware. I felt it best to be honest with if I wanted to seek asylum and join Konoha. Getting ahead of yourself." Specs. Jiraiya spoke up in a stern tone. "We need to know everything you know about my old teammate." Hi. And so she did. She was part of the recon force, meaning she was an agent of the snake. That particular bit of information made all the occupants in the room scrutinize her. All the more her powerful sensing ability would have allowed Orochimaru to pinpoint the location of certain key figures of the village, as well as targets of interest to him. Naruto and Sasuke as the Snake Sannin were very interested in their bloodlines, but what worried them the most was that Orochimaru was mobilizing his forces, which sent off many alarms on the Konoha shinobi's heads. Their target was quite clear to them. "He's going to attack us," Jiraiya muttered in dread. "Right in the middle of the exams? But I thought Oto was a very small village." Kushina shook her head in confusion. "How is he hoping to get the manpower to attack one of the big villages? I do not Believe he is seeking an all-out battle. Hiruzen said, his eyes hardened. Thinking on it logically, he plans on a quick strike to fulfill his objectives and escape swiftly before we can retaliate properly. This means he either wants to take something from the village or remove something he perceives as a threat. Taking that into consideration, his most likely objective is that Jiraiya finished for him. He wants to assassinate you. Karen nodded, which made Hiruzen sigh. I had a feeling it would come to this. He tipped his hat as old memories and regrets came to him, seeing the image of the young boy so full of promise and potential who turned into a monster. He should have ended if not for the love carried for his apprentice. His eyes turned to the young girl before him. And you are a recon scout of Otogakure. Turning to the ANBU beside her, she showed Iduru her pocket, wanted to show no hostile intent. Upon looking, he gave her a nod, for which Karen pulled out a metal headband with Otogakure's symbol. Young lady, you realize this places you in a very complicated situation. You have admitted working for a renowned traitor to this village who wishes for my death. A grave nod came from the glasses wearing Kunoichi. I know, but if there was any chance in showing I mean no harm to the village and wished to join, I had to be honest about my former employment. Why the hell would you work for a bastard like that? Naruto exclaimed. It was all I had. Karen sighed. My dad died when I was little and my mother just a few years after I was alone. Lost. Orochimaru found me and gave me a purpose, a place to belong where I was valued. The bastard had emotionally manipulated her. Kushina thought bitterly, a sentiment shared by the others. He found a scared and lonely little girl and preyed upon her insecurities and fears so he could better use her for his own machinations. How many orphans had he turned to his side like that? How many people was he willing to use and sacrifice for his own ambitions, and just how many of those poor directionless youths had he horribly experimented upon, all for his sick quest for knowledge and power? And here was this girl who wanted out. You saw him for what he really is. Jiraiya said. It wasn't a question. She nodded. I did. I just couldn't take it anymore. Not after all I saw, the things he did and what I helped him do. The Hokage tipped his hat as he closed his eyes and thought, and why our village? Why not just go off the radar entirely? Because I know what he's capable of. I fear he might find me anyway. I'm sure it won't be long before he knows I'm no longer obeying his commands. She fidgeted nervously. And considering this village's history, I thought you might be more lenient with someone of my heritage. Okay, that made everyone lift a brow. Your heritage? Hiruzen shifted his head. Karen glanced over to Naruto and Kushina before she took a deep breath. My full name is Karen Uzumaki. Everyone could have heard a pin dropping in the room with the silence that followed. Both mother and son gawked while village leader and Toad Sage were not faring any better. Even Iduru, by his body language, looked surprised. It was Kushina who shook it quickly before glaring. Young lady, her voice etched with emotion. If you are lying, I swear to you, you will regret it. Who are your parents? Hisao and Kuriko Uzumaki, Karen said quickly as she shrunk under the older redhead's gaze. Kushina froze. Kuriko-chan, her voice almost a whisper. However, Hiruzen, upon gaining his composure, was unreadable. We will need to take a blood test to prove this claim. Use my blood. Kushina spoke quickly. Kuriko was a first cousin of mine. If what she says is true, the test will show a familial match with me. Iduru. One word was all the Hokage needed for the ANBU to understand his intentions. The ANBU nodded and disappeared. When he returned, he had a pair of needles ready to extract their blood. All they had to do now was wait. Karen couldn't shake off the feeling of uneasy as all eyes continued looking at her in contemplation and suspicion. 20 minutes later, after what felt like eternity, Iduru came back to the office handing the Hokage the scroll. Hiruzen must have read the results at least 3 times to make sure he wasn't seeing things. He turned to Kushina and Naruto with an unreadable expression. The results came positive. There is a familial match. She truly is an Uzumaki. Both mother and son had their breath hitch in their throats while Jiraiya's eyes widened in shock. They turned to the young girl in the room, who cowered under their gazes. She had known these two people in front of her were her kin, though it had been quite a shock to hear she was so closely related to the Red Death. Konoha. Karen was simply overwhelmed, unsure on what to do now. These were her relatives, her family. Gods, it has been so long since she last thought of anyone as her family. Even if the spectacled girl didn't know how to act at the moment, Kushina, on the other hand, knew just what to do. She approached Karen, who fidgeted nervously before dropping to one knee, and surrounded her with her arms in a tight embrace. Karen froze. She couldn't remember the last time someone actually hugged her, nor could she stop the tears that soon fell from her eyes before returning. Kushina's embrace. Son of a bitch, Jiraiya muttered as he read the scroll himself. He blinked, looking up, seeing now Naruto was beside his mother hugging Karen, as well as own tears starting to fall. His gaze shifted to his sensei. Well, old man, I shall her grant asylum, but if she wishes to join the shinobi corps, she will be under probation for at least 4 months. Hiruzen could not stop a smile that formed at the sight in his office. Kushina rubbed the top of Karen's head before glanced over to Hiruzen and Jiraiya. She is staying with her family. Orochimaru will never get near her again. The morning hustle was in full swing as people and businesses went about their day. Well, that would be the case if everyone had not frozen in place as they saw a ghost of a living legend was strolling through the village. Kushina ignored the shocked stares as she, Naruto, Karen and Jiraiya made their way to the blonde's apartment. Said blonde only looked wide-eyed as he walked, seeing civilian and shinobi alike staring at his mother in absolute disbelief. I think people noticed you're back, Mom. Oh, I wish they wouldn't stare at me so much, Kushina whispered, cringing as she did her best to ignore the look she was receiving. It's so unnerving, right, Naruto? More or less an expert on the subject droned dispassionately. Kushina immediately regretted her words and wished she could eat them. It's okay, girl, Jiraiya assured her. Give it some time, they'll get used to it, I hope so. One of the ninja they're about to pass by gawked at her. Kushina Dano, he muttered in disbelief. You're alive, how classified? Kushina replied with such ease that it clashed with her previous mood, almost as if those words were second nature to her. Surprisingly for Naruto, that seemed to ease the ninja's surprise a lot. Understood, good to have you back, and went about his business. Naruto's gaze followed the ninja until his neck couldn't turn anymore. Okay, that was weird. He went from getting the shock of his life to having zero questions. Ninja life, kid, Jiraiya wisely said. Not the weirdest thing, it can happen. Everyone will most likely believe she was on secret assignments all these years. Black Ops is very hush-hush. For a reason, you learn not to ask questions. Walking beside her blonde cousin Karen, who no longer wore a Kusa headband, spoke up. So where are we going? We're heading to Gaki's apartment and grabbing all his stuff, Jiraiya answered, now having both young teens look towards him. Kushina gave a smile. We're going to take you to your real home. The blonde's eyes went wide. What was the old man's plan? To give you your parents' house when we explained your heritage when you were ready, but since Red here is back, no point now. Jiraiya crossed his arms and can finally get those ANBU new mission assignments. He noticed the odd look from his part-time student. Come on, brat, you'd think we wouldn't have you watched over. Wait, it had begun to dawn on him. You're telling me the people in my apartment block are all ANBU? Well, not all of them. We only have so many ANBU. A fair number of them are, though others are Jounin, Chunin, even some retired ninja live there. He snorted at Naruto's incredulous look. Seriously, kid, you're a valuable target. We sure wouldn't have let you live on your own without making sure you were well protected. So nearly all of them? Yup, the lady with the dogs, Inuzuka Sensor, the old lady that pressed flowers, retired medic specialist on herbal medicine, the weird antisocial guy Aburaim Nuff, said the stoner at the top floor. Nano, that was just a stoner on the top floor. Honestly, nobody knew where the hell that guy came from. He just showed up and started living on the top of the damn building, but it was shown he was harmless and really good at making cannabis. As Kakashi worked through some reports on his team and the prelims and coming third exam, he let out a loud sneeze. Kushina couldn't shake off the feeling of unease she got from looking at her house, though part of her felt like she had last seen her just a couple of days ago. The other part of her knew it had been 12 years. She thought it'd look more run down, abandoned, but Jiraiya had assured her Hiruzen had the house routinely checked over and maintained, so one day Naruto would properly inherit it. The same 2 stories block with a tower connected right next to it. It was modest on its own right. Neither Minato nor herself had ever cared owning a fancy estate. Minato and her together had made this place a home. To think he was no longer here sharing this life with her and their son, it sent a stab of pain through her heart. She didn't want to step into the house, didn't want to enter and be greeted with silence. Instead of her husband's kind voice, God, she hadn't even visited his grave yet, and she was terrified of doing so, but she had to do this right now, face her fears, to show her son this was the home he was meant to live in. All this time the blonde and younger redhead looked wide-eyed at the place. This is home. It was more of a statement than a question as Naruto whispered. His mother gave him a soft smile before they walked up the wooden stairs to the door. Kushina's hand shook as it held the key. She took a long deep breath. While Jiraiya could see so many emotions coming from the Yuzu woman, she inserted the key. Upon opening the door, she looked to her son and Karen. You guys first. Naruto stiffened for a moment before he took a step through the threshold. The interior was rather quite modest and simple. Karen had to admit this was not what she was expecting of a house that belonged to the Ondame Hokage and Red Death. The furnishings were kept homey and well cleaned. She did not see one speck of dust anywhere. Truth be told, as the 2 teens wandered around inside, just outside, Kushina held her chest with her hand. Her heart wouldn't stop racing seeing her turmoil. Jiraiya placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. Hey, if you're not feeling ready yet, you don't have to stay here. We'll just get you and Naruto another place. She shook her head after taking a deep breath. No, I need to do this. He looked at her in concern. You haven't even properly grieved yet, girl. She had been thrown from the day of her son's birth, her husband's death, 12 years into the future, without her having even had enough time to process it and come to terms with it. One would forgive Jiraiya if he thought Kushina clearly wasn't okay. Well, I guess this is how I start. She steeled herself and walked Inside the house, the entrance, the living room, the kitchen, and the rest of the rooms she couldn't see at the moment, they all brought too many memories that should remind her of happier times were now tinged with heartache and sorrow, for they reminded her of what she had lost, the man who loved her, the life they could have had with their son. She took a deep breath and continued on, hearing her son's voice coming from the kitchen, as he inspected it, clearly impressed with its setup. Kushina prided herself on keeping a fully stocked kitchen with all the tools she required to make the many meals Minato enjoyed. She would cook them now for him, as she was always meant to do, and Karen, God's the girl, had just suddenly appeared in their lives without leaving her a single moment of rest to process everything that happened to her. But she was Karika's daughter. She had fond childhood memories of her mother from Uzushio, to know that her parents were gone and that she had been in Orochimaru's service. Even with her grief, while she tried to piece her life back together, Kushina simply could not refuse giving the girl a home. She was family after all, so Kushina pushed down her grief. Right now she needed to be a mother. Her composure nearly shattered upon seeing a picture in the hallway of her and Minato celebrating when he was named as the old man's successor. A chopped breath escaped her lips, so she brought up a hand to cover her mouth and stop it from becoming a full cry. Even the image of him made her heart throb painfully. Jiraiya grimaced, though thankful that Naruto and Karen went downstairs as they discovered the old training room. Minato and Kushina Matey said nothing as he guided the redhead to the couch in the living room. Her body shook with her hands over her face. The old toad sage knelt in front of her. This is going too fast for you. You need to stop and let yourself adjust. His voice quiet, so not to get the kids' attention. If I stop. She lowered her hands with fresh tears that gleamed around her eyes. I don't think I'd be able to get back up. Her voice hoarse in a partial whisper. Everything feels so wrong, like I was flung into some parallel world where my husband is dead, Michan is gone, and my son spent 12 years alone to fend for himself. What the hell am I supposed to do? Jiraiya honestly thought of himself a poor teacher. Regardless of his boasts, he didn't think much of himself. After a lifetime of failures, who was he to actually help guide this woman when she clearly needed help? He who couldn't even save a friend from himself or protect his student. But seeing the pain on Kushina's face, the woman who had gone through so much already, tear-stained and lost, reminded him that a poor teacher or not, he was still a teacher. It was his duty to offer guide, especially to the people who he thought of as family. Endure, he said strongly, placing a comforting hand over hers. You know far too well this life will consume you up if you let it, so all I can tell you is that you need to endure. Be a mother for your son and stay strong, because for all that this cruel world has done to you, never doubt for a moment that it will stop, so you need to endure. Her eyes, angry and mournful, glared at him. Hasn't this world taken enough from me already? My home, my clan, and now my husband and my friends. You can stay here and wallow about how unfair everything is, knowing it's pointless, because doing so won't change anything that happened, or you can show your feigned Uzumaki spunk that makes the universe give up in exasperation. He grinned. That's the Kushina I know, the Kushina everyone loves, and the Kushina who can still have a life with her son. Kushina, why do we fall? She heard Tsukiko Bachan's voice in her mind. She still had no answer, but the redhead closed her eyes before she gazed down to her hands. Her breathing became steady. The old lessons of Bachan echoed in her mind. She soon rubbed her eyes as she looked up to Jiraiya. Thanks, this place is awesome. Databeo, Naruto cheered as he ran up the stairs with Karen, who shared his enthusiasm more quietly but still smiled. Striding to the living room, he saw his mom on the couch, who smiled at him while Jiraiya stood with a grin. Glad you like it now. This is long overdue. Welcome home, Sochi. Naruto had slept peacefully that night in the guest room. His original room was still a baby's room. Yeah, that was something in the process of being fixed while Karen had spent the night on the couch. He guessed once his room was ready, the guest room would be hers. Having a home with a family was weird, but weird good. Speaking of said family, he had spent all breakfast bombarding Karen with questions, a task his mother joined in while she made breakfast. Where she was born, how was her childhood, her likes, her dislikes. The spectacle wearing girl took it all in stride. For the first 5 minutes afterwards, she started looking panicked. He guessed she started making weird faces when the questions just wouldn't stop. Muttering to her, this is my life now. She must have been overwhelmed in joy by the idea that she had a family now. Of course, part of the deal with Karen's probation was that wouldn't be let out of his mother's sight. Former agent or not, working for Orochimaru was a very grave matter after all. Not that Naruto believed there weren't ANBU watching them hiding somewhere, so that meant Karen followed them everywhere, which honestly, he was fine with. All the more time to get to know his cousin. Like right now, Karen was standing awkwardly to the side while his team gathered in their usual training ground, joined by Jiraiya and his mother for something special. So what exactly did you need all of us for? Sasuke feinted annoyance while being genuinely curious while he glanced at Karen. The rest of Team 7 had been filled in on the presence of now a third Uzumaki in the village, while her former affiliations with a certain snake made him wary, but the open honesty from the glasses Wearing girl chose to give her the benefit of the doubt. If nothing else, the Uchiha felt glad for the blonde, but a part of him was more jealous than anything. Here Naruto now had his mother, a family, while he still had to return to that empty place in the clan grounds, but jealousy is unbefitting of his pride as an Uchiha, so he would push it aside. Sakura wasted no time in talking to Karen, and the girls soon found out they had plenty in common. Reading, studying techniques, they were of the same intellectual mindset, so they quickly hit it off. The pinkette on her part was also very curious about what the sand mean, and the elder Uzumaki had planned, while Kakashi had figured out what was going on, and things definitely would not be boring after this, so he remained quiet, smirked under his mask, waiting to see the kids' faces. Wish I brought my camera for this. Well, Kushina said sweetly, wearing her old ANBU pants and sleeveless shirt, smirked while, yes, this is something for Naruto and Karen. I wanted everyone here because this will be something you might gain yourselves down the line. A summoning that immediately got a reaction. Summonings were indeed a very valuable asset to a ninja, but not everyone could say they had one. Signed a contract with an animal clan was a difficult affair. Some clans were little more than mercenaries, and you could be whisked away in a moment's notice, much like one did when summoning a creature to fight for you, or assist you in such a manner you repaid their services in kind. If that were the case, others were content with money, other valuables, or even favors. Then there were those contracts built on familiarity, either passed down by a family or forged with trust by the user. Those were more intimate, based on friendship and camaraderie. You have a summoning contract? Naruto asked, excited. Kakashi rolled his eye and snorted. The kids had no idea. Boy, do I. Kushina beamed before curiously looking at Jiraiya. Wait, have you had him sign the Toad contract yet? Haven't had the time. Figured you could first do a demonstration. I do know they will be happy to see you again. A somber smile formed on the older Uzumaki soon before she turned 3 shades white. Genryu is probably really pissed right now. You think? Kakashi and Jiraiya drawled. They likely noticed your chakra signature become active again on their end. I'm surprised they haven't reversed summoned you yet. Kushina-sama. Kakashi spoke with interest. Kushina squinted. If I know that old grouch, he wants me to summon him so he can yell at me personally. She shivered, recounting the time she got her summoning angry. A thought came to her as she tuned to Sasuke. Do you have your mother's tiger contract? Tiger contract? The Uchiha lifted a brow. My mother had her own summoning. First I ever heard of it. Well, I'm not surprised you weren't told. I mean, yeesh. The Uchiha weren't happy with that particular situation. They weren't. That was strange. What was so bad about his mother having a contract? Oh ho boy, no, it was quite the drama back in the day. Has to do with Makoto's grandfather or something having the contract, but he wasn't from the clan and only his descendants could sign it and nobody else, and the clan wasn't too happy about it, of course. And upon seeing the bewildered expression on his face, she stopped her rant. Oh wow, you really had no idea, didn't you? None whatsoever. He had been fairly certain his mother was completely pure-blooded Uchiha like his father. Why didn't anyone say anything? Oh, your elders probably didn't like to admit their strongest member wasn't fully born from the clan. They were assholes like that. That caused Sasuke to frown darkly. That's my clan you're insulting. I'm insulting the people in charge. At the time you probably were too young to understand, but the elders who lead your clan, Sasuke, they were horrible people. She clicked her teeth as her expression hardened. Michan deserved better than following their orders all her life. She then realized the very uncomfortable and awkward look she was receiving, particularly the one coming from Makoto's youngest. One look at Jiraiya's disapproving glare told her not the time. She had gotten a bit off track again, hadn't she? Coughing into her hand, she tried to get back on topic. I'll help you look for the contract later. Anyway, how about you guys meet my clan's partners? Karen adjusted her glasses. Welcome to subject change. And just as curious, I know Ataki-san has the dog summoning from profiles, while Jiraiya-sama obviously has the toads given his title, but not even mom told me about our clans summoning. Well, showing was better than talking, and Kushina soon bit her thumb before going into several hand seals and slamming her hand to the ground. A seal soon spread from her palm outwards. Kuchio's no jutsu. A massive plume of smoke engulfed the entire training ground, catching the kids off guard. They soon froze upon hearing a loud and deep bestial growl. As the smoke faded, they all looked up and up. Its body was serpentine silver scales, shone in the morning sun, having legs and arms with 4 light claws on each limb, a snout lizard-like head with razor-sharp teeth, and its maw antlers. The top of its head with long white mane. It let out a roar so powerful they all had to cover their ears and felt the very ground beneath them shook. Kushina Uzumaki, a dragon. Oh great gods in heaven, it was a dragon. The dragon clans were a rare sight in the elemental nations. Seldom did they interact at all with humans. They preferred to stay away from their politics and power plays. There were many stories About the great serpent's rumors about how they would only speak with those of their choosing, the one great exception being a clan that lived at sea as the stories went, and that clan just happened to be. They back away in fright as the dragon lowered its head until it was face to face with Kushina, who kept widely smiling despite his clear anger. "Where in blazes have you been?" the silver-scaled beast roared. "We thought we buried you that day that the contract line had come to an end, but then we find the signature of your chakra in the scroll active, meaning you were alive all this time." Kushina cheerfully waved at him. "Hey Genryu, sorry I made you guys worry." A trail of irritation-filled sweat traveled down his brow, clearly taken aback by her nonchalant attitude towards the whole matter. Taking a deep breath which made nearby grass flutter forward to his nostrils, the dragon calmed himself down and exhaled. "You have 5 minutes to explain yourself, or I swear on my ancestors you will regret it." Well, it took longer than 5 minutes, but Kushina had the great dragon's complete attention. Genryu let out a throaty growl, a dangerous gamble using an untested seal, but it worked. "I'm still here," Kushina spoke with resolution before she turned to her son and Karen. "And have my son and a niece to raise." Genryu focused his eyes to Naruto and Karen, who froze. "I bid you greetings, hatchlings. I am Genryu, chief of the Dragon Clan." He looked closer to Naruto. "You look more Namikaze than Uzumaki. That good or bad?" A rumble from the great dragon's throat. "It makes you unique, and that is never a bad thing, hatchling." The youths let their eyes wander over the mighty creature that projected an aura of awe and majesty. Their instincts told them this was an old being, powerful and wise. They had only seen the likeness of his kind depicted in paintings, storybooks. To be in the presence of one of the reclusive dragons was a dream many children had. In contrast, with their astonished expressions, Kakashi and Jiraiya acted very casual regarding the whole. "There's a dragon here thing, yo Genryu-sama." Kakashi lifted a hand in greeting. "Long time no see." Jiraiya added with a smile, "Ahataki Toad Sage, indeed I have not seen you in some time." The dragon greeted back with a nod of its large head. Karen let out an explosive breath. I heard the stories, but I didn't believe them yet." It brought even more questions. "But if Uzushio had you all along, how did it fall in the first place?" Genryu's gaze darkened and Karen felt she had said something she shouldn't. "The battle waged all those years was against more than just men," the dragon chief replied, his voice laced with anger, a very old type of anger, one that bordered in hate even. "But that is a tale for another time, and I would rather not stain this moment with painful memories. Now is a day of celebration. Kushina yet lives, and so does the main branch of the Uzumaki clan, meaning that the dragon contract can continue its honored tradition on instinct." Naruto rubbed the back of his neck. "I'm new to being a part of an actual clan, but I hope to be a good summoner." Absently, Sakura rubbed her friend's back with a reassuring smile. Genryu lifted a brow at that and glanced to Kushina, who waved it off. He turned his attention Karen, who stood a bit straighter and spoke. "I'd be honored to follow in the footsteps of the Uzumaki of legends." Genryu-sama giving a nod. The silver dragon lowered his right hand, as a blue scroll being the same size as the one Jiraiya carried puffed into existence. Kushina soon took it and unfurled it. The kids leaned in and blinked at the contents. "Only your name is on here, Mom." The older redhead gave a mournful nod. "When Yuzu was destroyed, so was the summoning scroll, along with all the names of those who had signed the contract, so a new one had to be made. This one, and for it to have only her name, it meant the dragons had not found another Uzumaki ever since." That was a depressing thought. Kushina shook off the sadness before smiling. "Well, go ahead, you two, bite you thumbs and sign your names beside mine." Both Karen and Naruto felt a rush of excitement as they bit down on their finger and wrote their names. Genryu himself grinned. It felt good seeing names back on the summoning scroll once again. "What are the hand seals?" Karen asked as she finished first. Kakashi stepped in explaining the correct signs, which both Sakura and Sasuke watched carefully. "Give it a try, hatchlings." Genryu's own enthusiasm shone through along with Kushina's as she bounced on the balls of her feet. Naruto and Karen performed the hand seals. Boar, dog, bird, monkey, ram both shout together Kuchios no Jutsu and slam their hands on the ground. Naruto was hyped beyond belief. They actually had a contract with dragons, freaking dragons. Oh, he just couldn't wipe the smile on his face as the smoke cleared, revealing, "Oh, this isn't my house." Two little grass snake-sized critters. Alright, perhaps he got a bit too hyped there. Maybe he should have applied more chakra. Karen didn't share his disappointment, though she was staring fascinated at the small blue-scaled dragon she had summoned. Naruto took a good look at his own summon, the one who had voices confusion. He was red, which was kinda cool, actually a very nice shade. "Am I to be a companion?" the blue one said, staring with reverence at Karen. "It must mean the scroll has been signed." "It is an honor, my lady." He bowed his head. "I am Yasu and I am your partner from now on." Well, that was a respectful Little fellow his own summon on the other hand still looked very lost. Its little eyes looked everywhere, settling on the great silver dragon above them. "Oh hi great chief," he waved with his little hand. "Ah Hien and Yasu, I remember you." The great dragon nodded. "They are young, but they will grow alongside you." Hien turned back to the blonde who summoned him, bowing, "Greetings, I am Hien." He took a long look at Naruto. "Are you Uzumaki?" Apologizes for being rude, but I was told Uzumakis were all redheads. The blonde slumped forward. Well, he was polite if nothing else. Jiraiya cleared his throat. "Alright, now my turn. I have another summoning for Naruto which belongs to me and your father Minato." Genryu chuckled in reminiscence. "I have not seen the toads in ages. How is that surly old Gamabunta doing?" "Still the same surly old bastard. You remember the Gama-san," drawled as he took off the scroll from his back and unfurled it. He glanced to the rest of the kids. "Sorry, but this one is just for the brat." Sakura waved it off. "I'm fine, still have to train myself before thinking of summoning. I think I'm going to look for my mother's tiger summoning scroll when I get home," Sasuke simply stated as he watched Hien and Yasu. Hien looked curiously as he floated on Naruto's shoulder. The blonde glanced at him. "You okay with that?" The little red dragon gave a nod. "It would be an experience meeting the toads with that." Naruto looked at the names on the scroll. Who the hell's Erasure? Why wasn't his father's name there? He should have been the last person to sign it right then. His mother started to laugh like a lot. She had to hold her stomach while tears appeared at the edge of her eyes, threatening to spill. Her knees buckled as she struggled not to fall and roll around on the ground. "Okay." Jiraiya face faulted. "Can't believe I forgot about that." He sighed. "That's your father's signature, say." Wakakashi chuckled. "That is indeed your father's name, Naruto. It says Erasure." Sakura drawled, squinting. "Look at the kanji properly. It's actually Minato." It took them a second to process that he was a seal master. Sasuke said incredulously, "How could his calligraphy have been so horribly? His own name is nearly unrecognizable." In Minato's defense, Jiraiya spoke on behalf of his student. "He was really drunk at the time." Now did Kushina fall to the ground laughing, sweat dropping. Naruto shook his head as he signed his name beside his father's on the toad summoning scroll, and soon going through the hand seals he slammed his hand to the ground. Kuchiyos no Jutsu. In a puff of smoke, a small orange toad with purple markings around his eyes, mouth, and stomach appeared, wearing a blue jacket. The toad blinked as he looked around. "Where the heck am I?" He turned, seeing a blonde human who knelt down at him with a floating red dragon. "You summoned me?" Naruto grinned. "Yup, Naruto Uzumaki, nice to meet you. This is Hien." He thumbed to red dragon. "Hello Gamakichi." Jiraiya spoke as he rubbed his chin. "That's the toad, Chief Gamabunta's eldest son." "Oh great, the pervert's here. Pop's gonna love this." The toad drawled unenthusiastically. "Well, I can see you got your father's attitude." "Oh, ignore the old man." Naruto waved it off, following his own advice by ignoring indignant cry of, "Hey, we're gonna be partners from now on." "Or really?" Gamakichi didn't sound so sure. "Look, I'm flattered, but I don't really know a lot about fighting." "Hey, not a problem. The three of us can grow strong together," Naruto said, ever the optimist, before turning to his dragon partner. "Right?" Hien the dragon asked. "How does one fight?" Naruto and Sakura face faulted at that, much to the amusement of the adults present. Sasuke deadpan. "Fantastic. Now the great dragon spoke with his booming voice. "We all started young. What's important is that you all grow strong together." Whoa, the small toad had pretty much fallen on the palms of his paws, thrown back by sheer shock at the sight of the great dragon. Why, your chief Genryu of the Eastern Sea Clan." "Greetings, young tadpole. Tell your father I'm still waiting for those 7 bottles of sake he owes me from losing to Shogi." Everyone face faulted save Kushina, who just laughed. Well, today had been an interesting day to say the least. Back home as night settled and Naruto could say he was both still excited and worn out. He had gained 2 summoning contracts along with befriending his personal summonings Hien and Gamakichi. They were different, almost like night and day, with Hien being so formal and Gamakichi being a smartass. After having one of the best home-cooked meals ever, everyone de-iced to head for bed now that the blonde's room now had been properly refurnished with a bed instead of crib. He could sleep there. It still felt like some weird dream. He turned on the light to his room. Was about the same size of his old bedroom in his apartment, but it just felt different. He couldn't explain it. Was this what kids felt like, having parents and being in their own home? Naruto was still adjusting to the fact he wasn't an orphan anymore. He walked over to the dresser by his bed, looking at all the pictures of his friends, till he noticed something sticking out from the top dresser drawer. Opening it, his eyes shot open, seeing an envelope with his name and another below it. "Your father." Time froze. He could feel his heart pounding. "Dad, when did he?" Almost cautiously he took the letter and sat down on the bed. His hand shook as he opened the envelope, taking out a piece of folded paper. Unfolding it, he saw his name again. To Naruto. "Hey kiddo, in about 1 month you're going to be born. I can still remember your mother telling me she was pregnant like it was Just yesterday he could almost feel the joy with which his father had written those words. I'll admit I'm terrified. Out of all the things I've done, being a father is completely new territory to me. Mine didn't live to see me become the man I am today, so I don't have a lot of experience in that field. Some things just repeated themselves, it seemed. Naruto thought grimly before resuming his reading with rapt attention. But I know this life isn't easy. This is why I'm writing this, in case anything happens to me. Hopefully you'll have your mom there. Be patient with her. Kiddo Uzumaki are a rowdy bunch, but considering you're half Uzumaki, I find myself doubting your ability to be patient. Well, he wasn't wrong in that regard, the blonde thought with humor. If you're reading this, then it means my fears have become reality, and I won't be there to hold you, teach you, guide you along whatever path you choose. For that I am sorry. First thing a parent needs to do is to be there, and I already failed in that regard. Naruto felt his eyes watering. No, it wasn't his fault. So I want you know these things. This world isn't kind. It will try to bring you down every chance it gets, but yours is the choice to either bow in defeat or stand on your feet and make it back down. And I know you'll have the strength to make these lands a better place. You're my son. After all, his father trusted in him so much. Take care of your mom. She already went through so much, and she deserves to be happy. In her I always saw a spirit and strength that dwarfed my own or anyone I've ever known. Really, I can't think of anyone who loves life more than her. She always knew what to say, never won an argument against her. Even through the tears falling down his eyes, he couldn't help but smile. You too carry the legacy of a proud nation and a great clan. Remember, you are a child of both the Uzumaki and the Namakes, so you can be as gentle or ferocious as the waves, yet free as the wind. That potential to be your own person is yours alone, and nobody can take that from you. To be his own person, someone who shaped his own destiny. That's what his father wanted for him. But above all, I want you to be happy and know that no matter what happens, I'll always be with you. I love you, your father. Minato Namikaze. The blonde's body shook as his tears grew in earnest. All his dad ever wanted was for him to be happy and shape his own future. He had heard that from Kakashi, Hiruzen, Jiraiya, even his own mother. But now, looking at this paper that was written by his father, he knew now his father truly meant it. Whatever lingering anger he had for his father faded in an instant upon reading that letter. Dad was hoarse as the tears flowed. Restless was what Kushina could sum her feelings right now. So here she was strolling silently through the hallway before stopping at the guest room, smiling, seeing Karen soundlessly sleeping. To think she'd run into Kurika-chan's kid. She felt a small pang in her chest knowing she'd never see her cousin again. She shook her head. No sense in being wishy-washy. She turned and kept moving through her home and came to notice Naruto's room light was on. Nearing the door, she found her son fast asleep on his bed, though not dressed for the night. Poor thing must have crashed the moment he came in, walking in and about to cover her son with his blanket. She noticed a paper in his hand. Curiosity got the best of her and deftly took it without disturbing her son. Unfolding it, she froze as she saw the handwriting. Minato wrote this. Her surprise soon turned somber as tears threatened to come from her eyes. Of course he planned ahead. He always did. She choked down a sob as she noticed there was a message for her hidden in the letter, something she had taught him how to do when they were genin. His message was simple but just as heartfelt as his words to their son. Be happy. How could she deal with all this? Minato was gone, Makoto was gone, and she took a shuddering deep breath, fighting back the sudden wave of negativity surging within her. No, she couldn't wallow in pity. That wasn't her. Kushina placed the covers over her son and turned off the lights, carefully placing the note on his nightstand, and returned to her room. She looked at the bed meant for two people. It just felt so empty. She couldn't, or rather didn't want to sleep on that bed. Not yet. Kushina walked over the window to open it. She needed some air to cool her head. How am I going to do this without you, Minato? She thought mournfully. I'd give anything for you to be here right now, for me, Chan, to be here, for Mom to actually come to her senses and come back. I need someone to help me. Anyone? Hey. Jiraiya's voice came from the roof and she saw him sitting there with a bottle of sake at his side. The pale moonlight showed his slightly pink cheeks from the alcohol. Want a drink? Kushina did not question why he was on her roof drinking. She merely sat next to him and joined him. Drinking with someone was much better than drinking alone. Jiraiya placed his arm around her. It's all gonna be okay, child. And for a moment Kushina believed him. The pervert was always there for her. You're the closest thing I have to a father in my life, you know that. Jiraiya softly smiled. That's sad. Tch, tell me about it. Their cups clinked against each other in toast and remembrance for the man who meant so much to both of them, to the people they lost, and for the strength to soldier on. They were ninja. That's what they did best after all.